Good morning and welcome to UFD. I'm John Trieb, the lay leader. To accommodate my shorter colleague Diane, who will give our sermon, I'm going to be bending over a little bit because it's low for me. Yes, for those who are vertically challenged. So, welcome to our Sunday service here at the Unitarian Universalist Fellowship of Pottstown. We're a liberal faith. We're a welcoming faith, and we welcome you regardless of your ethnic background, your religious background. We're all spiritual searchers. We have no dogma. We ask that you respect the dignity of all people, both in this facility and outside, and then we can all be at peace. I have my little list here, which Diane provided me, which tells me what I do and what she does. So I'm going to be treading cautiously. So first things, as always, do we have any announcements from anybody for the good of the fellowship? If you do, please come to the microphone to my left and let us know what you're feeling.
Good morning. My name is Miranda, and you can hear me, right? Okay. I have three. There's going to be a labyrinth event here on New Year's Day. We're happy to be able to offer the spiritual option for people in the Pottstown community. The labyrinth was gifted to us by Ursinus College almost 10 years ago, about 10 years ago. And let's see. Okay, so the event was announced in the newsletter and the times were wrong. So if you'd like to come and use the labyrinth and witness the transformation of this room into a very different room, we have a labyrinth that rolls out and takes up the whole room. And a typical walk takes about 20 minutes around the labyrinth. It's a meditation opportunity. You can use it a lot of different ways when you meditate. I like to sometimes walk and bring friends who have left me, friends and have even friends that are still alive. Sometimes I bring all of the dogs that I have with me, that's I love dogs. But so that's one way you can use the labyrinth. There's also a way of working with problems. If you have a problem, you think about it before you go on the labyrinth, and then you let it go and walk. And very often an answer will come to you after you walk or while you're walking or after. So just a couple of ways to use that. So just to let you know, the schedule is that the children will come at 1 o'clock and they'll have the use of the labyrinth until 2. And then from 2 until 4, adults will have a chance to walk it. So we'll be here, and this is on New Year's Day. So it's a good way to start the year. And while we're on the subject, I need people to volunteer. Is anyone who's available to come and help set up the labyrinth on the Saturday before New Year's Day? Yeah. That would be New Year's Eve day. And it would be in the afternoon between 12 and 3 or so. If you're willing and able to help with that, we have to move some chairs and bring the labyrinth out and unfold it. Then would you please see Kay? She's not here in the room at the moment, but you'll see her. She's buzzing around, helping everybody.
You're not having service on Sunday?
No service.
I have an addendum to that. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so we will have a very informal poetry service in the social hall. So if you feel the need to come and the topic is poetry, we will be meeting at the usual time, but it'll be in the social hall. I know it was listed as poetry and potluck. You bring what it is you want to bring.
Like a poetry potluck,
What did I say?
not poetry and pop. It's a
Poetry
poetry.
potluck. So
Yeah.
bring poetry.
Bring your
poetry. But we will be meeting.
Well, that's
For those who want to,
good.
we will be.
People have asked me about that.
Yes.
I was sorry to disappoint them, but now we don't have to. Also, the membership committee is offering our UU 101 and 102 classes on the third Sundays of January and February. So on those days after Sunday service, we'll enjoy a little bit of potluck lunch and then head for classes. And we'll bring our desserts with us into UU 101 class. And that's for people who are just interested in finding out about unionism, and also people who are interested in joining, because it's a requirement. So thank you.
Hi, I'm Linda, and I am hot off the press here to announce that we have hired someone to provide coverage for the nursery. I know Megan is gonna be good. She's got a bachelor's in education. She currently works at a preschool. She also has a 1-year-old, so she'll be bringing her little boy Austin with us. Her name is Amanda. I can't remember her last name. I apologize. She will be starting that first Sunday in January, which I believe is the 7th. Don't quote me on that one. So yeah, so our RE program is getting stronger. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Chloe. I'd like to thank everybody for donating a whole lot. It's way more than I expected. I'm very grateful. I'm sure the dogs are going to have a very Merry Christmas. Thank you.
Having executive privileges, I think Chloe demonstrates for us in real life, the ethics that guide us in Unitarian Universalism. It's one thing to go to RE, it's a second thing to live it, to do it. So we thank you. I'm going to reverse the order of things here a little bit. Speaking of which, Chloe, if you could let our chalice for us, if you will. We have very few symbols in our faith. We're not a symbolic faith with fancy stained windows beyond those. But the chalice we light each week in harmony with all of our brethren throughout the world who follow our religious path symbolizes the flame of light that hopefully will grow within each of us, both during this service, throughout the week, and throughout our lives, as we hearken to the Spirit that we find that speaks to us and will guide us in our life journey. I will now make the noise of the chime. This time we ask you to silence all things that could make noise. Try to place yourself in a point of calmness and prepare for the service as well as you can. If you meditate, it's a good time to begin focusing as you might in that case. As Emily often says, when you're up here, it's amazing how long the chime goes on, far longer than you would think. And I will now turn the pulpit open over to Diane Trieb. Diane, just by way of introduction, since I might not get another chance, actually. Diane, I've known, excuse me, since I joined the Unitarian Universalist faith in Reading in 1992. And Diane has been there at all times. Diane is a writer and teacher of practical spirituality. For those of you who did not receive our mailed message about the service, that contains a link to her website. I'm sure one of us can provide that for anyone who did not receive it because it may be useful to you. She is a counselor. She believes that we must surrender to take emotional journey back. She has the home of the hearts, need glasses. Here we go. Home to our hearts in order to reveal our hardwired power to love without condition. Sounds very you to me. We are the unconditional lovers we have been waiting for. Diane facilitates empowerment groups, grief groups, and spiritual discussion groups, as well as individual sessions. And actually the blurb's on the bottom here. So to learn more about what she does, go to DianeTrieb.com. I did look at the site. It's very intriguing. So Diane, you can take over and I will periodically.
Thank you, Don. So it is so nice to be here again. I walked in and had 3 unexpected joys. The first one was seeing CJ, my longtime friend from the Reading UU Church. And she's the one that actually brought me here, and I haven't seen her for a long time, so that was lovely. And then I got to listen to Dona Nobis Pacem that the choir was practicing, and that's one of my favorite all-time songs, especially Christmas songs. And you all did a very nice job. And because it's not easy, I sing that with a group and you get mixed up very easily with where your part is, so that was good. And then the third one was, every time I come up here, the podium is so high and I keep shrinking. And so I thought, oh my God, I feel like a little girl here, which would have been appropriate since I'm talking about the little match girl. But then some kind you kind person, what's your name? Mary, kind person, said, would you like that lower? And I said, oh my God, yes. And so she worked the miracle, and I feel so much better being able to be higher and look down at what I'm going to share with you. So that was wonderful. So let us begin with opening words. I once wrote an affirmation called A Christmas Wish for Every Day. I wrote this because I feel every Christmas morning that I wrote this because of how I feel every Christmas morning, which is absolutely wonderful. I feel absolutely wonderful because it is a morning of giving and receiving. And it goes like this. Be happy with who you are. Be happy with what you have. Be eagerly expecting more happy. This affirmation has been on my refrigerator for a very long time, and I often overlook it, but it catches my eye at Christmas and I try to practice this. I love who I am on Christmas morning. I have spent time getting gifts for everyone, and now I get to give them. And others have done the same for me, and now I get to receive them. I am happy with who I am because I have focused on my love and appreciation for others. And now I get to demonstrate that by the giving and receiving of gifts. I am happy with what I have because now I have spent time focusing on giving and receiving appreciation. So what more is it that I would need? Giving, receiving, and appreciation are so fulfilling in and of themselves. If my life feels so wonderful on this special Christmas morning, and I feel so wonderful on this special Christmas morning, would it not serve me and feel really good to eagerly anticipate more happy and more wonderful? I know from experience that eagerly anticipating happy puts me in a higher vibrational frequency, which matches the higher vibration of what I am wanting and attracts the happy of what I desire. And what I desire more of is feeling as good as I do on Christmas morning, every morning. So here I am on this dark and cold early December morning, Thinking about what needs doing today and how I would like to feel better physically, emotionally, and spiritually. Desire for improvement is good. Doing things to improve is good. And I want to move fast forward to the happy I feel on Christmas. And if I want to move forward to the happy I feel on Christmas morning, I could eagerly anticipate giving, receiving, and appreciating of myself and others. I can make every morning feel like Christmas morning if that is what I desire. To feel as good as I do on Christmas morning every morning would be lovely. But of course, there is the suffering of Christmas. It can be a time when we look at the joy others seem to be feeling and feel bad that we aren't feeling this way at all. We may feel depressed, not enough, poor, without purpose, without a mate or friends, unloved, unlovable, invisible, or hopeless. This is what we are going to explore this morning. By way of Hans Christian Andersen's classic Christmas story, The Little Match Girl. The hopelessness and suffering Christmas can bring, and what we can do about that. Giving, receiving, and appreciating begins at home, in your own heart, for your own self. So let us begin with opening hymn number 241, In the Bleak Midwinter, and stand if you are able. So it's time for a story for all of you.
Morning. Andy coming?
So as some of you may have heard him stomping down the halls, my youngest is having some difficult feelings this morning. And Miss Megan, who has been reading our story, usually graciously agreed to spend time with him. And asked me to read the story. I think I got better at that too. I hope that's feeling better though. I really do. Okay, so today's story is called Augustus and His Smile by Catherine Rayner. Augustus the tiger was sad. He had lost his smile. So he did a huge tigery stretch and set off to find it. You ever seen a cat do a really big stretch like that? It feels good. First, he crept under a cluster of bushes. He found a small, shiny beetle, but he couldn't see his smile. Then he climbed to the tops of the tallest trees. He found birds that chirped and called, but he couldn't find his smile. Further and further Augustus searched. He scaled the crests of the highest mountains where the snow clouds swirled, making frost patterns in the freezing air. He swam to the bottom of the deepest ocean and splished and splashed with shoals of tiny, shining fish. He pranced and paraded through the largest desert, making shadow shapes in the sun. Augustus padded further and further through the shifting sand until pitter-patter, pitter-patter, drip, drop, plop. What's happening? You see what's happening? Right? Augustus danced and raced as raindrops bounced and flew. He splashed through puddles bigger and deeper. He raced toward a huge silver blue puddle and saw there, under his nose, his smile. When Augustus realized his smile would be there whenever he was happy. He only had to swim with the fish or dance in the puddles or climb the mountains and look at the world, for happiness was everywhere around him. Augustus was so happy that he hopped and skipped and jumped away, smiling. Thank you for listening.
Okay, we'll now sing our children to, are we? So now is a time in our service where we ask you to help us with one of the three essentials that keep us going as a fellowship, which are time, talent, and we never want to forget the last piece, which is treasure. We do operate, as we noted, we're fortunate to have a person who will be our nursery individual, and we are thrilled, but money has to be paid. And I see our president nodding in the background. She is intricately involved with that. So I thank you in advance for sharing some of your treasure with us. We thank you and bless you for what you can give us today.
How many of you are familiar with the Christmas story, The Little Match Girl? Yeah, it's not one that everybody knows necessarily. It is one of my favorites because I feel like the little match girl represents the archetype that I carry, and I think many of us carry, of abandonment and not being seen. That's the reason I love it. So I'm going to read it to you this morning. It was terribly cold. It snowed and was already almost dark. And evening came on, the last evening of the year. In the cold and gloom, a poor little girl, bareheaded and barefoot, was walking through the streets. When she left her own house, she certainly had slippers on, but of what use were they? They were very big slippers, and her mother had used them till then, so big were they. The little maid lost them as she slipped across the road, where two carriages were rattling by terribly fast. One slipper was not to be found again, and a boy had seized the other and run away with it. He thought he could use it very well as a cradle someday when he had children of his own. So now the little girl went with her little naked feet, which were quite red and blue with cold. In an old apron, she carried a number of matches and a bundle of them in her hand. No one had bought anything from her all day, and no one had given her a farthing. Shivering with cold and hunger, she crept along, a picture of misery. Poor little girl. Snowflakes covered her long fair hair, which fell in pretty curls over her neck. But she did not think of that now. In all the windows, lights were shining, and there was a glorious smell of roast goose, for it was New Year's Eve. Yes, she thought of that. In a corner formed by two houses, one of which projected beyond the other, she sat down cowering. She had drawn up her little feet, but she was still colder, and she did not dare to go home, for she had sold no matches and did not bring a farthing of money. From her father, she would certainly receive a beating. And besides, it was cold at home, for they had nothing over them but a roof through which the wind whistled. Though the largest rents had been stopped with straw and rags. Her little hands were almost benumbed with cold. Ah, a match might do her good if she could only draw one from the bundle and rub it against the wall and warm her hands at it. She drew one out. Ratch! How it spluttered and burned. It was warm. It was a warm, bright flame like a little candle. When she held her hands over it, it was a wonderful little light. It really seemed to the little girl as if she sat before a great polished stove with bright brass feet and a brass cover. How the fire burned, how comfortable it was. But the little flame went out, the stove vanished, and she had only the remains of the burnt match in her hand. A second was rubbed against the wall. It burned up, and when the light fell upon the wall, it became transparent, like a thin veil, and she could see through it into the room. On the table, a snow-white cloth was spread. Upon it stood a shining dinner service. The roast goose smoked gloriously, stuffed with apples and dried plums. And what was still more splendid to behold, the goose hopped down from the dish and waddled along the floor, with a knife and fork in its breast, to the little girl. Then the match went out, and only the thick, damp, cold wall was before her. She lighted another match. Then she was sitting under a beautiful Christmas tree. It was greater and more ornamented than the one she had seen through the glass door at the rich merchant's. Thousands of candles burned upon the green branches, and colored pictures like those in print shops looked down upon them. The little girl stretched forth her hand toward them. Then the match went out. The Christmas lights mounted higher. She saw them now as stars in the sky. And one of them fell down, forming a long line of fire. Now someone is dying, thought the little girl, for her old grandmother, the only person who had ever loved her, and who was now dead, had told her that when a star fell down, a soul mounted up to God. She rubbed another match against the wall. It became bright again, and in the brightness the old grandmother stood, clear and shining, mild and lovely. Grandmother, cried the child, oh, take me with you. I know you will go when the matches burned out. You will vanish like the warm fire, the warm food, the great and glorious Christmas tree. And she hastily rubbed the whole bundle of matches, for she wished to hold her grandmother fast. And the matches burned with such a glow, it became brighter than in the middle of the day. Grandmother had never been so large or so beautiful. She took the little girl in her arms, and both flew in brightness and joy above the earth, very, very high. And up there was neither cold nor hunger, nor care, for they were with God. But in the corner, leaning against the wall, sat the poor girl with red cheeks and smiling mouth, frozen to death on the last evening of the old year. The New Year's sun rose upon a little corpse. The child sat there stiff and cold with the matches, of which one bundle was burned. She wanted to warm herself, the people said. No one imagined what a beautiful thing she had seen, and in what glory she had gone in with her grandmother to the New Year's Day. We are human beings, which means we experience both humanness and beingness. Sometimes our human is unhappy. Our being is always acceptance, appreciation, and unconditional love. We don't have to work at being. Our being just is. Being just is unconditional love. Our human job is to open our hearts to the unconditional love within. Unconditional love is already hardwired into our human heart. I'm going to read that again because when I first read the statement, it just resonated with such truth. Unconditional love is already hardwired into our human heart. We know this because of how immediately we can access this love when we encounter a puppy or a kitten or a baby. We know we are hardwired for unconditional love because of how naturally we access this love. When we encounter another's suffering, another's crying, another's unhappiness, or when we listen to a story like The Little Match Girl. We felt unconditional love for the little match girl as we listened to her story of what seemed like an unbearable life. If we could have been a character in her story, and we were walking down the cold, frozen, snow-filled, icy streets of 19th century London and came upon the little match girl, we would have stopped. We would have kneeled down before her and perhaps taken her frozen little hands in ours and asked where her family was. When we discovered her unbearable plight, we may have scooped her up, wrapped her in our arms, and taken her home and sat before a fire. We would have taken her onto our lap, held her close, and rocked her back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, soothing her, letting her talk, letting her cry, helping her to feel safe and loved. Sometimes our lives feel unbearable, or sad, or depressing. Sometimes we feel like the little match girl or the little match boy, especially at holiday time, when it seems like others are happily surrounded by loving family and friends, and we are not. We may feel like we have been abandoned, left out in the dark and the cold, like the little match girl. It is at these times that we want to remember that we are not just the little match girl or boy. We are also the hardwired being of unconditional love. We are the character we imagined we would be if we were written into the story. It is at these times that we need to write ourselves into our own story, to write our beingness and our ability to be an unconditional lover into our story. And in our own story, we are both the little match girl or boy and the compassionate, unconditionally loving being. We must kneel down before our suffering child and take him or her into our arms, holding them close to our heart, rocking them back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, offering them comfort and safety and love. We are both the wounded child and the loving, compassionate parent. We are both the embracer and the embraced. We are the unconditional lover that we have been waiting for. And this unconditional lover that we are is capable of bearing the unbearable. As a wise person once said, you can handle anything because you have already handled everything. Take a moment to look back on your life and acknowledge yourself for the unbearable situations and feelings that you have been through and survived and thrived as a result of your own resilience, as a result of your own power to love. And maybe the unbearable does not go away. And then you learn to live with it. And you get stronger because of it. Within our being of unconditional love, within our heart of unconditional love, there is a welcome space for the unbearable. And there is an expansive space for all possibilities. Our heart of unconditional love holds a sacred space for something to happen. An act of healing, an act of transformation, or just comfort. And our sacred heart space can become a point of connection for much larger hearts that share the holding with us. The heart of Mother Earth, the heart of the maternal universe. Our little match girl found peace and grace in dying. Her angelic grandmother came to take her home to heaven. We don't have to die to experience going home. We can come home to our being of unconditional love. We can come home to our own heart of unconditional love. And our being of unconditional love can come back for us if we've lost our way and walk us home. Home to our sacred heart space of love and comfort. Home to our sacred heart space of joy and grace. So I'm gonna switch here, if that works. I don't know if that works with the
Okay.
taping, to maybe go to sharing or discussion. And if anyone, is it okay to do sharing, discussion, and joys and concerns now before we move on?
We can generally do the joys and concerns at the end so we can turn off the recording.
Okay, so why don't we just do sharing and discussion, and if there isn't any, then we'll just continue on with the rest of the service. But what I want, maybe I'll share it first. Sharing of being able to hold space for the unbearable. I had the opportunity and the joy of giving birth to a daughter late in life. So she was born with a lot of physical challenges. And her name was Molly Rose. And it was very hard for me to work with her and try to help her improve because it was so sad. And so the way I got through my time with Molly was to cry every day. Not necessarily long, but just because of the sadness. I was grieving the loss from me and for her. And when she passed away at 3.5, it was of course sad, and I grieved it, but I'd done so much grieving along the way that I felt like, okay, now she's gone and perhaps to a better place, like the little match girl. That's what I imagined her being, like a little match girl. But I was left with feeling guilty. I felt like because I was the mom, I should have been able to make her better or help her find a way to more abilities in this life. And I didn't. And no amount of reasoning or no amount of processing my feelings would get me to a place of not feeling this guilt anymore. So when it came to the anniversary of the 1-year anniversary of her passing, I didn't know what to do. I didn't know how I would get through it. I was dreading it, just dreading the memory and the anniversary of it. So I decided to go out camping under the stars. It was in November. It was very cold. And I just surrendered to not knowing. And I surrendered to my heart. And my heart felt open and vulnerable. And I thought, well, maybe I'll just cry through the night, or you know, I wasn't sure what would happen, or maybe I'll just stay awake all night and journal. I didn't know. But I was out in the cold, and it was a very clear night. So I laid down on the ground and looked up at the stars. And that is how I spent my night, just looking up at the stars and feeling an acceptance and feeling unconditionally loved. And that was coming both heaven, if you will, and from me. I didn't cry at all. I just was present. And in the morning, I felt reborn. I felt like, okay, I can go on with my life now without feeling guilty or not enough, because of the acceptance that came from here and from here. So that to me, the resilience that I gained from that has served me so well for the rest of my life. Well, for the rest of my life so far, because when you have gone through hard times, And you find your way, and you find your way not only to just surviving it, but to thrive. It's such a blessing. And so I was wondering if anyone would like to share briefly their own story or experience that relates to that. And if not, that's fine, we will go on, and you can certainly just stand up or sit where you are. But I think stories are wonderful. I think our personal stories are wonderful because I think that's how we learn better than any other way, is from our stories.
First of all, I remember Molly, and my mom used to come and give me and
Yes.
set up a whole group of people to come to.
Yeah.
So I'm sad to be reminded of that, but it's, I know it was a very difficult time. For me, the story I'd like to share is a very difficult time after my car accident. I was in a very bad car accident in 2002. Most of you know this. What you may not know is a very specific moment in time, which was after the accident. I had mild traumatic brain injury, so I couldn't think straight. I have severe neck and back pain. I couldn't work. I couldn't do anything. And I knew that I had to get back, and so I eventually found a job at Kutztown that enabled me, because I couldn't stay awake for for more than a couple of hours. But at Kutztown, I could teach for a couple hours and then sleep for a couple hours, and teach for a couple hours and sleep for a couple hours. But I was able to go see the good health, the pain management specialists at Reading Hospital. And they put me through a multidisciplinary thing where I had to go to occupational therapy. And the occupational therapist made me see that I had to give up my electronic calendar because I couldn't remember things to put into the calendar. She made me get an 8.5 by 11 book to put all my all my things in. And the day that she made me realize that was the day that I let go of all the anger that I had about the accident and the acceptance that that my life had changed, and I just had to live with the changed life. And from that was kind of the turning point. And I was able to move on from that. And of course, I've done great since then. But it was a very particular moment in time. It may seem inconsequential, but to me, it was very important.
Awesome. Thank you so much for sharing that story, CJ.
Anybody else have anything to share? If not, I'll share. As many as you know, my wife has had a variety of maladies that stretch back 5 or 6 years. Unbeknownst to me, she was having mini strokes, but it wasn't obvious to me, given that she had other problems like a bad knee and was hobbling with bone-on-bone pain. So a sequence began when she had her knee replacement about 4 to 5 years ago. For various and sundry reasons, she never had total relief of the pain. She may have tendonitis. She's always had ongoing discomfort with the knee. As time had passed, she became less and less functional. Along the way, several years ago, she had an out-and-out stroke with minimal left-sided symptoms. And the MRI scan showed that she did have a lot of ongoing damage to the brain, especially cerebellum, where she had imbalance, which made her life difficult. And so she became walker dependent, had to be very careful. We got some companionship, and I got some companionship for the afternoon, saying this is appropriate to help her. And then she stumbled and fell and broke a piece of her sacrum near the sacroiliac joint. It was very, very painful. We tried to soldier on at home, but that didn't work. And so now she's in a nursing rehab facility making progress. So I've had to adapt, being even a physician as I am, as to the limitations that I have. As Diane says, that I'm not a failure because I couldn't do everything for her. I've had to learn gradually, still learning to give that up to the nursing facility where she's making steady progress. and understand, we probably will realize the goal of coming home with appropriate care at home. But, life will never be what it could have once been. And so I have a choice of continuing to make this adaptation, which is ongoing, as it is for many of us in our transitions, to having a different relationship and having to be a different type of caregiver as a caring husband, and that has to be sufficient. And, realize that some great force is afoot, and that I have to grow through this as best as I possibly can.
Thank you, John. That was beautiful. Anyone else? Thank you both for sharing, and interesting that you both mentioned surrender. Surrender is a big piece of our spiritual journey. And with it brings an open heart, and the open heart often comes after we have taken the emotional journey of resistance, whether that's crying or anger or fear or guilt. So, yes, thank you so much. So we shall move on to our closing hymn, number 244, Came Upon Midnight Clear, which is you famous for being a Christmas carol that a you wrote. And stand as you are able.
I will extinguish the chalice, and we have our normal words, which are in the order of service, if you wish to together take up. We
but not a land religion, but one community for fire. We carry in our hearts and in our hands.
And that was perfect, like right along with what I'm saying, that flame is always burning right here. Sometimes it seems like it's a little small, it's an ember, so we have to blow on it. We have to breathe into our heart, and that keeps the flame alive. The closing words are from a delightful movie, which you can see on Netflix for free, entitled A Boy Called Christmas. I love this movie so much. I just discovered it a year or two ago, and it's great. So this is what the Boy Called Christmas says at the end of the movie. The darkest night will end. The sun will rise, and Christmas mornings will come again, when anything and everything can happen. If anyone deserves the infinite joy of loving and being loved, it is you. I came back to tell you that magic is real. It's not about the presents. It's about what's behind the presents. We give what we have to show that we care. And then we all share in the joy. And that joy grows into hope, one house at a time, and spreads throughout the land. May you experience the joy and hope of this Christmas season. And now we will invite people to come up to share joys and concerns, if anyone would like to do that. Forget too, that Christmas is not always joy for us or for other people. And to find our way to having compassion for ourselves at those times when we're not feeling joyful and maybe sad and missing people and feeling alone. There's so much, and it's about being both. It's about joy and suffering. We're human and we're being. We have the human that suffers, but we have the being that heals. So tune into those hearts when you're suffering. Thank you very much. I've enjoyed being here. Guess we're done, right? Oh, sorry.